Broadcasting live from inside the power band, this is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, the Mulverine, along with the intrepid proto-molecule Jarhigo.
Yum sang.
And the always exciting and lovely Algorithm.
Aw, lovely.
Yeah. Ceres Station. Eros, Ganymede, the UN, Belters, the MCRN. That's right, folks. This week we took a deep dive into seasons 1 and 2 of the hit Amazon Prime series, The Expanse. And today we're going to be having a conversation about that. Let's kick it over to Algorithm.
High level. I would be very, very curious to hear the two of your high levels before I go, just because you have not read the books. I'm very curious what a first exposure is from a couple of viewers.
I will jump right in and go first and say that I kept seeing the banner ad for this on Prime, and it looked really interesting. I was more intrigued when one of our listeners suggested that we do this.
Yeah, the listener's name was Mike. I don't want to say his full name just because, I didn't ask permission first, but...
That's all right. Mike asked, you're getting a ton of love today, man.
We love you. Thanks for pushing us to do this one.
And then I watched the first episode, and I got just a bunch of really played dialogue straight off the bang, and I kind of did an eye roll and was like, oh god, here we go. This is what this is going to be for like 4 seasons and many days of my life. So I was definitely not bullish on it. And by the time I got to, I don't know, episode 5, I was totally hooked. I absolutely loved the show. I had to use a ton of restraint to not start watching season 3 because I wanted to wait until after we got done with this episode. And I think the show is absolutely fantastic. I think it's one of the best things out there. It's certainly one of the best space things out there. I would even go so far as to say this is as good, if not better, than Battlestar Galactica. And I think the only thing that Galactica has on it is that it's Battlestar Galactica. But it's that good. Cinematography, acting, dialogue, attention to detail is incredible. I absolutely love this show. And it's so good. It's so flippin' good. Next.
So, yeah, I'm likewise interested to hear what you have to say, C-Lab, having read the books, because I didn't even know this series was based on books until, I don't know, I got like halfway through the first season and talked to somebody else that was nerding out about it, and then realized that it was based on a book series. And aren't the writers involved with Game of Thrones as well?
One of the guys, Ty Frank, is a former assistant to George R.R. Martin in the writing space. So not with the show and somewhat with the books, I believe.
Right. Okay, yeah, I knew there was some connection there.
Yeah.
I guess not a very big one, so never mind.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say that he probably worked quite closely with George Martin, so it might actually be a hefty connection, but I just don't know the details.
Right, and James S.A. Corey is actually a pen name for the writing team, correct?
Yeah, two people, yeah.
Yes, which I finally figured out at the end of that 30-minute interview video.
Oh, yeah? That was a good video, though.
It was awesome, but I was like, well, hang on, I want to hear, let's let Ben finish. How about that?
That's a good idea.
Well,
how about that?
I'll keep it brief. I mean, really, Kev, you kind of said it all there. I could reiterate all of that. I think you really covered it all, man. One thing I really did enjoy about the show was the design of like the ships and the stations. It reminded me a lot of the artwork of Chris Foss, who my brother used to have like a bunch of like hardcover artwork books, and he had one that Chris Foss had done a bunch of artwork in. I used to just sit in front of that thing all the time when I was a kid. But otherwise, I think Kev pretty much wrapped it up. The acting, the writing, the story, everything's great.
If I may ask, can I ask Jarhigo a quick question? Because we both loved this show and we both watched it together. What did you think of my Battlestar sort of comparison?
I definitely got some BSG vibes, Kev, for sure. Story-wise, it's not the same, but there's something about the production of the show and the fact that they decided to go with pretty realistic flight physics and the just the way it's filmed, the lighting and all of that reminded me of BSG a little bit.
Totally.
And the way the story pans out, like the way they jump from group to group, kind of. Like there's definitely some similar stuff going on there between those two shows. But I like that. I miss BSG, so it's cool to have something different that harkens back to the same kind of qualities.
Yeah, I would say it's almost just the quality of the production, like the level of detail. If just like the whole package very much reminds me of BSG because it's just got that great attention to detail in every single, corner.
And it lifts from a lot of things too, like there's definitely sprinklings of Battlestar, there's sprinklings of, there's even sprinklings of Halo, for Christ's sake, with the vomit zombie stuff. And there's quite a variety of sci-fi classics sprinkled throughout.
Yes, for sure.
Right. I don't know what a vomit zombie is yet, so don't spoil it for me, please.
Well, you do. It's just they chose to only have like the main point of the entire first book be one episode on Arrow Station where 5 people fall over dead.
Oh, I gotcha.
The proto-molecule basically like 28 days later style zombie. Everyone freaks out and eats each other and explodes and dies in vicious, horrible ways, but it was probably a major budget issue as to why they couldn't really go there with it. I mean, it definitely has kind of like the book, at least when I read it, was quite Halo-ish in its like, the flood or whatever. Maybe the connection's a bit tenuous, but...
Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, like some of the armor and the helmets and, is very Master Chief-esque sort of.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the Martian armor, had that kind of feel to it a little bit.
Yeah. But as far as high level for me, in a way, like I spent a lot of time thinking about this and how I wanted to approach the conversation because nobody wants to listen to somebody bitching for an hour about like the differences between a book and a show. So
except me and Jarhigo.
Except you two. I just kind of thought a lot about it, and in a funny way, I kind of like went through the 7 stages of grief with this whole thing where like,
wow.
At first you're kind of like, meh, it's not as good as the book, blah. And then as time goes on, you kind of like come to terms with what it is and the constraints that they were under. And then even, further down that path, you circle back to appreciate what they were attempting to do. So, as far as like super high level for me, I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi TV. I've never really connected with a lot of it just because of the constraints. I'm kind of realizing that sci-fi TV is constrained by the business model of television and kind of needing to over dramatize things. And I'm so tied up in the books that it definitely kind of like, I don't know, had a shadow over my viewing, but I do appreciate what they're doing, and I'm really looking forward to the upcoming seasons, so I get the feeling that seasons 3 and 4 already done are quite a step forward, and then I'm really, really looking forward to the new stuff coming up with Amazon. So
yeah, I mean, Chad, I feel your pain, but I've over the years developed this sort of mental gymnastics that I put myself through, and I so that I can enjoy both things, I just treat them as 2 separate things.
Yeah,
I am never worried about a film adaptation going, 1 for 1 with a book or vice versa, because you just end up disappointed or jaded or pissed off, and it's a trick because no one's trying to fucking piss you off.
No, of
like
course.
You said, things happen because of practical constraints or budgetary constraints or time constraints. Even something's bound to get left out. Something's bound to not be as you imagined it in your mind. So instead, I just really try to enjoy the thing for what it is. That being said, I haven't read the books yet because, actually, quite frankly, because I wanted to avoid this conundrum, and I've never done it this way before. I've never done it where I've watched a show or a movie before I read a book. So it'll be interesting to see in reverse. Like, I'm hoping it plays out well.
I think it will. And one of the things I really want to push in this episode is convincing you to read the books as a companion to the show, in the sense that like season 1 is book 1 and you've already watched season 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be a decent time to read book 1 because it's not going to spoil anything. And it just kind of adds flavor as opposed to ruins what you've already seen. You know what I mean?
Not happening.
Yeah, well.
There's a new Alastair Reynolds book out.
Is there?
There's a new William Gibson book out. I can't even get to those because I'm trying to scramble through fucking the Hyperion Cantos. So
yeah, I just finished that. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, regardless, I'm not saying read it today. I'm just saying that, like, I think that reading the series of books as the shows come out without spoiling the shows would be something I would recommend to anybody listening. If you haven't read any of it, like, you can kind of use them as added lore and or a deeper dive, and I think that you will appreciate it more as opposed to it ruining the show, so to speak. But I think, like, this series in particular I find interesting because it literally sits on the boundary halfway in, halfway out of the new era in cinema or filmmaking, I suppose. The first 2-3 seasons on Sci-Fi had certain constraints, and now that it's in a streaming portfolio with Amazon, it has the opportunity to really broaden itself out and push the medium forward. I feel like a lot of my frustrations with the first 2 seasons probably directly come from the fact that in order for TV to be successful, it needs to be really punchy and really dramatic and fit into those very, very tight constraints. So I'm very optimistic about the series going forward. And I still appreciate the series for what it is. And it wasn't a shit show. The only real complaint I have is that it was over dramatic.
I can see that.
Like, there's a million differences, and a lot of people online talk about the book's very similar to the show. They always ends up in the same place, but how it gets there is slightly different, and that's fine and everything. But the only legit complaint I have is the drama. The 2 examples that I have that we can dig into a little bit later are there's way too much drama between the crew of the Rocinante. Like, they're super tight and, like, legitimate, like, family, and they don't shit talk and they don't backstab and they don't scream at each other. They're, like, super tight. And similarly, Bobby is, like, the most hardcore, rock solid professional soldier and doesn't flip out and doesn't fucking beat people to death. And, like, it was just kind of clearly because they needed to punch it up for the show. So it was interesting to observe that the show started on TV and now ends up in streaming, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to go back in time here because I haven't responded to anything in a little bit. Firstly, I want to just touch on what Jarhiko said about mental gymnastics going from a book to a film or a TV show and add a different perspective. Most of the time, I'm excited to see what's different. And I tend to look at the positives in both. And oftentimes I get psyched about both. So if I read a book, I'm like, oh, I just love this from the book. And it's like, oh, but the show is great. And I really like how they did this in the TV show. You know what I mean? So I think one of you sort of touched on that. But that's how I tend to look at that stuff.
Yeah.
The dramatics, the over drama. I don't know because I haven't read the books, but I can totally see, like, straight away, like Bobby Draper, like the crew. And again, it harkens back to what we've talked about. I feel like we've talked about this a lot recently, is being bold and taking risks. I wish that productions would be more bold to do something a little more, I don't know if demure is the right word, but where it is like that, where it's like the crew is just, they're tight, they're a family, they take care of each other, they don't make fun of each other, they don't rip on each other and do all those totally overly cliche, tropey things that we've seen in a million television shows. You know, I would love to see something like that. I would love to see, you know, the hardcore soldier who's, you know, it's just such a shame that more of that isn't done, I guess is what I'm saying.
And it probably will go that direction in the upcoming seasons, but for the first 2, it jumped out at me for sure.
Absolutely, man. And I can totally see it. Like, I knew right away what you were talking about. And I mean, the funny thing to me is that, like, compared to other TV shows, I think the dialogue's great, and I don't think it's full of cliche-esque, tropey nonsense. Like, I commend the show for that. But in comparison to the book, I totally see what you're saying. The only other thing I wanted to say was I had no idea that this started on Sci-Fi until you just said that.
Oh, okay.
I thought that this was straight up an Amazon show.
No, it'd be worth a quick digression into the pedigree there if you want.
Yeah, I think it's great that it landed on Amazon because I think they certainly have the money and the muscle to put more into it. I'm really glad that the show got saved by Amazon because that's certainly happened before with Netflix. Netflix took over Trailer Park Boys, which is a wildly popular Canadian series that spawned all kinds of little side things and movies and so forth. And if anybody out there hasn't seen Trailer Park Boys, you got to check it out. Also, it's sort of ironic because originally Stargate, the TV series, got canceled and Sci-Fi was the one that saved it.
Right.
So it's sort of ironic that it's flipping.
It's probably just because Sci-Fi is probably, along with most television, is getting to the doomed stage, and so they really need to run a tight ship and can't take as many risks. So I get it. I totally get why it was canceled, but I'm very thankful that they saved it.
Absolutely.
Do you recall much of the story on that one, Benny, or
The story on what?
the cancellation and the fans saving it and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I was gritting my teeth hoping that somebody was going to pick it up because I was way into it.
Yeah, cool. So did you watch it from when it first came out and watched it each year, or did you binge it more recently? Or
I think I discovered it while the first season was running.
Yeah, okay.
And then I've pretty much been into it since.
Yeah, because I read the books when they came out and kept forgetting that I'd read them. Like the new book would come out 2 years later and I'd be like, oh, that looks interesting. And I remember one time I read the first book again because I was like, oh, I don't think I've read these. And I got like 3/4 of the way through the first book before I remembered that I'd read it. I was like, oh, yeah, I've read this before. So I'd read them a few times and then watched the first season. And because the first season was reasonably close, I just left it and hadn't touched it again until we decided to do the show recently. So I completely missed all of the failings and savings and all that stuff.
Oh, wow. So I shouldn't say anything about the coming seasons, I would be spoiling it for you guys.
For Kev, yes. For me, I know everything because I've read all eight of the published books. So, but
right.
I think it would make a lot of sense to stick just to seasons 1 and 2 so that any listener can know exactly what they're in for spoilers.
No, we have to stick to 1 and 2 because I purposely did not go on to 3. Like I finished 2 like on Tuesday and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see the next episode. And then I was like, don't do it. Must resist urge to watch season 3. Nerd gland throbbing. Must stop.
Don't worry about it on our account because we've seen all of it, Kev.
I know, but I wanted to keep the focus tight on the show and not start like drifting into like, and this happens and blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know. I just wanted to do it like that, And I wasn't sure what you had done either, Ben. So I was
there are things that you guys are talking about that like I am constantly tempted to be like, yeah, but you see
that improves here or there or everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't do it because we're not. Yeah.
Part of the way that I'm talking about this is I'm aware that it's extremely likely that certain things will go in a certain direction in terms of how, like a good example is like, it's very obvious that if a crew stays together for a long time, they become more of a family. So like by definition, that's a highly likely outcome. But just talking about seasons 1 and 2, was my comment on it fumbling around a bit. Like maybe just to close out the high level stuff, Kev, one thing that jumped to mind for me was that in one of the recent episodes, I think it was one of the Star Wars episodes, you mentioned that in your opinion, Marvel and the MCU is this generation's Star Wars. And
that was you, dude.
Was it?
Yes.
I thought it was you.
No, that was definitely not me. That was 100% you. I specifically remember that. I don't remember anything, but I remember that minute of that episode.
Okay, well, to expand on that then, no pun intended.
I like what you did there.
Hey, I'm gonna... If Marvel's MCU is this generation's Star Wars, then I'm gonna argue that The Expanse has the opportunity to be this generation's Star Trek.
That is a massive statement that you just made right there.
I think that, especially with this streaming thing, they have the chance.
Especially since we have Discovery and Picard out right now.
Yep.
Like, that is huge.
I think the world building in this series that these guys have put together with these books is so much material that they could very easily become this generation's Star Trek. They have the opportunity if they don't fuck it up.
Yeah, it depends on what you do once you get past the main story, Is there an interesting side arc to talk about? And if there is, then yeah, they definitely could. Shit, I'd watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I'd keep watching it.
It's not going to be Star Trek in the sense that, we're not going to get Save the Farmer episodes on planets called Sorghum. Still can't believe that. But I get it, man. I get the comparison.
But I think that the analogy to me is Star Wars is pew-pew lasers and samurais in space, and it has quite a broad universe. Similarly, MCU has a lot of great base material, but like Star Trek always had a more rabid fan base, you could argue, had the convention stuff and people frothing over it, and had a bit more of a realism to the science and or a little bit harder science fiction-y stuff. So like it fits in that sense.
I could see it, but I also kind of feel like that type of show is another thing that's dying away. I feel like things are becoming more self-contained, and people just have an appetite for a different story when they're done with it. You know, I don't know if this is any indication, but we were talking about BSG earlier, and you know, there was a spinoff of that, Caprica, which didn't do so well.
Didn't do anything.
Yeah, and spinoffs in general seem to not do well. So that's my only, outside of Star Trek, that is.
Through the lens of what I would argue is the previous era of television. And
right.
One of the things that a lot of our listeners may be aware of is that Jeff Bezos, when he launched Amazon Prime to compete against the other streaming services, specifically said he wanted the next Game of Thrones. And because he's obsessed with space and has Blue Origin, his space company, it's kind of no surprise to me that he chose to save, and he specifically by himself chose to save The Expanse. There's a quote from him saying like he called his money people and was like, I'm sitting in the room with the Expanse guys. I just talked to them. Can we save the show? Please, please, please. And they called him back and said yes. So like, I think because he wants the next Game of Thrones, which is essentially like saying, I want the next mega franchise, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they go the Disney route with branching off eventually. But in the meantime, they've got, 5 more books, which is at least 5 more years of content,
That's really cool that he did that and said that, and really disappointing at the same time.
Why?
I don't know. I'm just gun shy about that. I want the next mega franchise attitude.
But the writers of the books wrote the books to be television series, and they wrote the books to be entertainment instead of high art. So
I get it. I'm just so over that. I'm looking for the next mega franchise thing. I'm so over it already, and like I'm not only over it, I'm bitter about it. Like,
Steamroller is disengaged and in neutral. Is there anything you want to chime in, Benny?
No.
And we're done, everybody.
I just don't have much to say about the business side of things.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough.
Well,
I'm not here for that.
Let's move into the actual seasons. I think it's a good enough reason to segue. Season 1. What did you guys think of Season 1 first time you saw it, in terms of how it unfolded and the story overall? Whatever you want to dig into.
Jarhigo, go ahead.
No.
Okay, I will go in his stead then. I feel like he's over there making a bomb. I can't see him, and he's like either putting like poison on the tips of darts that he's going to shoot at us, or he's making a bomb.
No, I just have Miller's bomb. That's like I have to press the button every 30 seconds, or it starts going bomb, bomb, bomb.
Nice. And he's like listening to us, going, "Should I let it go now? No, I'll give him another minute."
Yeah, these guys are still fucking babbling about business models.
It's just like it's just far enough like heavy and I can't move it. It's just far enough away where I can't stay near the mic.
When this started, I thought, when Alex came into the first scene and was like, please move your tray tables to the upper, I just was like, I rolled my eyes like literally a full 360 in my head. I was like, come on, this cannot be the opening of this show. Like this, I was like, this is gonna suck. This does suck. And Holden as well, I was just like, come on.
So when did it shift then?
I don't know. I would say it shifted probably by episode 4, certainly 5. It just started to click more. And it was just more was unfolding, and
like the Donager was getting blown up and Shed loses his head kind of stuff, or
yeah, exactly, yeah. I think it was probably around the time of the Donager, yeah, like 4, But in the beginning, I just was like, this is just trope-tastic garbage. I really did. For the first 30 minutes of the first episode, I was just like, I can't believe this is like this. And by the end of the first season, I was just absolutely wrapped. It's so damn good, man. Great acting, world building, sets, cinematography is fantastic. I love the physics. All the science that's included in the show is great. Props, guns, just everything, man. It's so good.
Totally.
Kev, I'm pretty much with you. It took me a little while to warm up to it, for sure. In direct regards to Alex making the seat tray in the upright position comment, yep, I'm with you there. But then as you see the show, you kind of realize that Alex is totally the type of guy that would not shy away from using a shitty cliche.
Yeah, he's just a wise ass.
He's just that type of guy. So it like, it's one of those things. A lot about this show, like, takes a while for it to unfold, but when it does, you're like, oh, okay. It's like, as it unfolds, more things seem to make sense.
No, you're right. And Cas Anvar, just, wow, what an incredible actor. And he is, really going back and watching episode 1 and episode 2 yesterday and today, and now having known 23 episodes of season 1 and 2, he has just created a absolutely wonderful character in Alex. And you see exactly what you just said, Ben, like why and how he would say something like that. Because he has this cool kind of, and if he nudged the needle on this like 1 degree in either direction, it would probably sour a lot of people, I think. But he's got this kind of cowboy Southern thing, almost like a trucker, or like I said, like a cowboy. And
he's got a drawl.
Yeah, he does.
Plays from Mars.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like he idolizes that, so that's what he does.
Yeah, but not in a way of like, like Demolition Man, for instance, where it's like, the movie's set in the future, but of course Sandy Bullock is like the biggest 90s nostalgia fan ever. And it's like, so we get all these contemporary references. Like, it's not like that. He threads the needle so beautifully with that character.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to kind of dive into like a character thing or a cast thing right now, but he's so good. And he's been in other stuff that is good too. He's an incredibly talented Canadian actor, and this showcases that talent.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. So, but getting back to the high level on season 1 for me, I think, I shared your feeling at first of kind of being like, I don't know. Like, I just was watching it because there wasn't really anything else on at the time, I guess. And I want to say it was right about when they get picked up by the Donager. There's actually the thing that really caught me was the scene with Bryk as Lopez. And he's doing the interrogations, and he pulls out the little like spherical focus pill and takes it and start like his pupils dilate. And I was like, at that point, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, it dragged me in, and I was curious, and there was something going on. Like, I was like, immediately, I was like, what the fuck was that thing he just took? Is that like some kind of, and like they never explain it. And, that was like a specific moment I can think of where I really got drawn into the story and have been since. Just a quick aside, Bryk played, the father in the Far Cry 5, and he was really great in that. Yeah.
Ooh, interesting. Haven't played the Far Cry series, but I know that it is revered. So
that was the first one I did, but I really enjoyed the hell out of it.
Right on, man.
Yeah, same. I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't played it. That's cool. It's a cool little nugget.
Yeah.
High level season 1 for me, I'll touch on the first interaction with the story in terms of reading it because it's so similar. But like, similar for me, in the books, they're similar enough where there's no point in digging into the great detail, but there wasn't the tray table line. So I think for me, where I got grabbed was the space truckers doing their thing, hauling ice, whatever, and then they go out to do something they don't want to do and check on the scopuli, and things just like heat up real quick where the ship comes out of cloak, and you're like, oh shit. And Holden's on the radio with his fling at the time, and the whole thing just blows up. It's just like a very action heavy sequence that really, fired it up, and then that goes straight into the Donager thing, in which it all happens again. And so similarly, like you get sucked in pretty quick. And I enjoy how it goes from space truckers to action sequences, and then just shifts into noir, which was unexpected. And, as we've mentioned a few times in previous shows, like the whole alcoholic noir detective kind of pulpy thing has been done a million times, but I still enjoy it every time I see it usually. So I definitely dug the noir elements in the first season/book.
You're referring to like Miller's arc?
Yeah, exactly. I like the multiple characters, Lord of the Rings style, multiple groups and or people having multiple threads that weave together towards the end of the book, and the noir element was unexpected considering the whole first couple of bits is space truckers and space action.
Yeah, there's a lot I might touch there. I'm always, every time they introduce like a new character or a new set of characters, it's like, it's going to intertwine somehow. And you're waiting for it to happen, like to see how it's going to happen if you haven't read the books, like myself. But, it's almost guaranteed to happen. Most recently, like they introduced Prax and, at first I'm like, okay, this is different. What's going on here? But then I was like, oh, well, how is he going to find his way to to the crew of the Rocinante, So it's always that kind of a thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that in most stories, at least sci-fi books or,
Yeah, for sure. But it almost always seems to get directly involved.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, I think it's conceivable that Miller's arc could have played into the story just fine without him ever having
set foot,
interacted directly with the crew of the Rocinante, So.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure.
When I said space truckers describing Alex, when I said trucker, rather, I was not implying that I felt the show had a space truckers feel to it.
No, that was my statement. Yeah. I was thinking more alien style, private company hauling ice kind of thing.
Fair enough. The word space truckers. It's just so stupid.
It reminds you of the Winnebago and Spaceballs or something?
Yeah, but see, the Winnebago and Spaceballs was intentionally dumb and awesome. Like, I'm really thinking of like other crappy science fiction films where it's like, hey, there's like a space trucker. Like, oh, okay. Like, that was real creative, Anyway, whatever.
Wasn't there actually a space trucker movie? Like,
I think there was.
I know there is, but what I'm I guess debating here is whether or not it was actually called Space Truckers or whether it was called something else.
I think it was, man. I'm just going to say yes. I don't think we need a Jimmy Google for that one. Let's just say yes.
Jimmy's already here with me. Sorry.
Oh.
Then there's also the Deep Purple song.
Okay.
Hey, Jimmy, run over to the deli and get me a sandwich.
A little bit more high level. I thought you were waiting for Jimmy to tell you something.
Sorry, Jimmy just did tell me something. They're out of sandwiches at the deli, but there was a movie in 1996 called Space Truckers.
There you go. On the space trucker thing, regardless of the term being cringy or not, the Belters essentially as a group are being treated as such, and whether or not it's accurate or whether it's the source of the kind of like, racism, there's like the politics and the social conflict was a really great layer to the whole thing.
Yes, it was.
Are you guys both still participating in this podcast?
Full disclosure and no surprise to any of the two of you, I just got stuck on Space Truckers. I'll save that for later. So, yes, politics. I'm with you. Awesome. Good. Yep.
I fucking hate you, dude.
I know you do. I know you do. I'm sorry. I am.
I don't know. That's it's definitely an interesting layer to the story.
Are you guys not into the politics side of things? Because like one of my obsessions is like geopolitics and kind of like power structures and the differences between leadership decisions and like people on the ground getting crushed under the boot stuff. And so that type of layer to a book or a story, I love.
I don't like go nuts over it. I am very interested in those sort of things. I'm very interested in social dynamics and the way people interact. So that's a broad way of sort of covering what you're saying, Chad. So to me, this show, I do like the political stuff. It is because the political stuff is the absolute commentary on what's happening in our contemporary society. And that's what they're talking about. And I really like how they have, I mean, look, we've talked in the past when we've done science fiction films about how science fiction typically is a commentary on what is happening in the world, or a social commentary. And this is no exception. And I love the way that they do it. And I like how the politics are woven into it. I really thought the character of Christian was, like, I'll be honest, super annoying in the beginning. Like, again, first couple of episodes, I was just like, eye roll. Who is this? I was like, who is this annoying woman? And like by the end of the first season, I was like, I love everything about her. I love the way she talks. I love everything. She's fantastic. And I like the way what her motivations are and the way those are all playing out. It's very full and very well fleshed out. And I really enjoy that. And I'm talking about her as a character and the way all the political machinations are fleshed out. It's really interesting and really good. And I like how the human race has sort of conquered the solar system, number one. I don't think we've ever seen anything where we've colonized basically asteroids and these sort of lifeless moons and other planets in the solar system. I love that. I was like, wow, this is fantastic, man. And to have...
It's like medium future.
Yeah, it is medium future. And to have the Epstein drive like that, I was like, wow, how cool is this? So it's like, it's not, magical warping or magical hyperspace like Star Wars and Star Trek. Like, this is like somewhere in between, and I dig it. It's like traditional propulsion that we have now with a little bit of like science sprinkled onto it to make it more efficient. So, a drop of fuel lasts for a long time. Very, very cool. I'm sort of getting off the topic of the politics, but yeah, I like the way that the politics are laid out, because that's intertwined with the social commentary. And I like the way it's laid out, where you've got these, the Belters are sort of the people under the boots, and then you got the Mars, and, Mars kind of was under the boots and now they're not. And, interesting dynamics there. Really, really like it a lot.
Do you dig in on the politics stuff, Benny, or is that not really your flavor normally?
I think in maybe in the books it would appeal to me more. It seems a little too. I mean, it's not too. Too is the wrong word, but it's very much. I feel like representative of something going on now, which I'm less inclined to be into for entertainment purposes.
Right.
Something like Dune, where it's like far flung and very different, like then that sort of storytelling becomes interesting. For me, The Expanse is more about the characters. It's more character driven to me. That's more what I'm interested in. And the overarching story. But the politics and the power plays, I just like every time something happens with that stuff, I'm kind of annoyed, Like somebody's fucking somebody else over, or, there's all this like the intrigue and the like that stuff kind of isn't, I don't know. That's not my favorite aspect of the story.
Yeah. It's a lot more subtle in the book. So you're right there. It's basically the entire second book is a political thriller. And the first book is essentially all noir vomit zombie stuff. So like Avasarala and Bobby don't show up until wouldn't show up until the second season at all. So they wouldn't even be in the first season if it was accurate. But I feel like pulling everything forward gave them more time to kind of let things breathe a bit. Otherwise, it would have been even more rushed on all the intrigue stuff. So I kind of get why they did what they did.
Yeah. That being said, I do love Avasarala. I think that character is terrific.
Yeah. I think this is a good opportunity to circle back to the cast a little bit, just to touch on that one, where my first impressions watching it were the cast is too pretty. But you're always going to end up with I had a different vision in my head bullshit when you've read the books.
I think that was part of my irritation in the beginning as well, when Stephen Strait came out and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
like
my first impression was Thomas Jane should have been Holden. It would have fit much better. But because my impressions of Miller were like Dennis Franz from NYPD Blue, like fat, kind of balding, washed out dude. So
now that would have been a bold move right there, was to make Miller somebody else and put Tom Jane in the Holden character. Yeah, I like that, actually.
Just to be crystal clear, I have nothing against the cast members, the people that play the roles. It was more just casting choices, So now that I'm 2 seasons in, I'm totally on board with everything. But my first impressions were that.
All right, I'm going to echo what you said because I want to be clear here too. Like, I am not making a commentary on Stephen Straight's acting ability. I think he's fantastic. I think the whole cast is fantastic. And I'm certainly not going to sit and trash talk another actor. I can't do that.
No. It's just interesting choices that were made originally that do or do not translate.
No. I was really I was referring to the production's casting choices of casting some very good-looking people, you know, and we get to see Stephen Strait with no clothes on straight away. And I mean, the guy's, you know, he's ripped like Captain America. Well, Chris Evans like Captain America, you know. But I do, you know, thinking back, like, you know, Tom Jane he's done a lot of stuff, and I was for about 2 seconds, I was like, I don't know how I feel about him in this. And then I was psyched that he was in it. Like, he's definitely when you and I were talking on the phone the other night, I brought up Raymond Chandler and Philip Marlowe and, you know, that whole detective thing, the noir thing, all of that stuff comes from Chandler. He basically invented that, you know, and then Dashiell Hammett iterated on that with the Sam Spade character, famously played by Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon. And, you know, that stuff is not new. People love the detective. It has been iterated on numerous times. We saw an entire story in the Animatrix called Detective Story that was very similar. That being said, you very easily could have written off like what Tom was doing in the beginning with Miller. And I kind of was like trying not to roll my eyes. And I was like, I want to see what happens here because this is sort of tricky to play. And he really added a lot of depth to it. And I thought it was fantastic, actually. But that said, I really like your comment about him playing Holden and putting somebody else. Like, I would have loved to see, and again, this is nothing against Stephen Strait or any of the other actors. Like, I love the show the way it is. But what you said, like, I would love to have seen a bold choice where they put a atypical actor in a lead role, like the detective role, like somebody that wasn't like a perfectly beautiful chiseled person, you know, and went with something different, and then put Tom Jane in not the Stephen Strait role, the Holden role. I think he would have been really cool as Holden, actually.
We can talk about what if all day here, but we should probably talk about what is.
Shut down.
And I think Thomas Jane was great as Miller. Considering that the alcoholic detective thing is kind of a serious cliche, it's been done a million times. The fact that, you know, though it may have started off a little cookie cutter, he brought so much depth to that character, and he brought something really interesting to it. And to do that to something that is such a cliche, to make that character interesting, I thought that was great, you know. And sure, somebody else might have done great too, but they didn't. So I got to give him mad props for that. Not to say that he couldn't be a good Holden, but he was a great Miller. So,
and I think he would probably have been a good Holden. It would have been a big challenge for him. But like you said, there's a lot of what ifs out there. The only other commentary on kind of the initial thinking of the cast is like Alex and Amos are both supposed to be 10-ish plus years older than Holden and Naomi. So they're kind of more schlubby and more of like, you know, Amos is more of a big lug and Alex is more of a kind of like, you know, mid-40s chubby balding dude as well. So it's not really critical, but the cast was too pretty thing is something that I'm well over now. Like, it's not a big deal anymore.
You know, I actually think I know we're sort of hanging out in the cul-de-sac, circling around, but I don't know, man. I think the Miller character is the harder character to play, and I think for Tom, and I think that he really walks the line with that one. He does a good job with it. Really good job with it. It's tricky to do that. It's tricky to pick up like a super troped out archetypal character. So Raymond Chandler invented that archetype, and it's been done a zillion million times. And to pick it up and do it from yet another perspective, I think is fantastic. So hats off to Tom.
Yeah. And the Holden character, I don't think, well, I'm actually really curious to ask a season 2 question to you guys. Did you guys get the vibe of a dramatic shift in Holden's character in season 2?
In what sense?
Like, was his arc in season 1 compared to his arc in season 2, and who he was and how he acted drastically different or totally the same in your perception of watching the 2 seasons?
perhaps subtly, but nothing stuck out to me too much. But then again, Holden isn't really a character that I hone in on, like granted, he's, where he comes in the story, it's, you can't ignore, but his arc tends not to be one that I pay much attention to.
Right.
For whatever reason. He's just not not that I hate the character, but he's just not a character that I like super identify with, I guess.
Yeah.
So it might have been lost on me.
I didn't feel like there was a ton of shifting with his character. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like Stephen Strait's made some good choices as an actor working with the adapted scripts, and I will say that I thought it was kind of odd that he works to keep a cool head and to be the rock that is sort of running the show. But then he seems to fight these instinctual urges to kind of, save the day or save people or do particular tasks. And he really like hounds on these certain things. Like when they see the creature for the first time on the thermals and he's, screaming at Alex to chase the thing. And he's just like, he's relentless sometimes. It's kind of interesting. But I feel like we've kind of seen that from the get-go, because the second the Canterbury got destroyed, he rips Alex out of the seat and he's like, we're going, So he kind of goes back and forth between those two things. What I did find odd was that in the very first episode when he's on the Canterbury and the captain's like, throws him the XO badge and he's just like, yeah, no, not into it. Nope. And it's clear that he doesn't want to do it, and I feel like he flip-flops real fast. And I don't know if that exactly fit or if that was the right choice or the choice I would have made or that was the way the writing should have gone or whatever the hell happened there. But that was the only thing that I found odd.
It's an interesting point because he is already XO in the books and there's none of that flip-floppy bullshit. So it's a weird choice they made. But
yeah, why did they do that, man? That see, like now hearing that from you, I just it's just so pointless. Like, why bother? It's 15 minutes of one episode.
It might have been because without that hesitance, it might have been misinterpreted by the audience that he was power hungry and wanted to be in charge, because like some of the subtleties of who's going to take command and they're voting like a democracy and stuff, he kind of just like, no, I'm in charge now, so I don't know. It's not really worth digging into, but it is a very interesting point. It's a very interesting example that you bring up. The reason I asked the question in the first place is because like the way that it's supposed to unfold is kind of like season 1, he's running away just like everybody else on the Canterbury is from real life, but he's a good person who tries to make the right decision and do the right thing, which the first example of that is him going and check out the distress beacon. So like it sets up pretty early that he's like trying to do the right thing at all costs. And then towards the end of season 1, he gets infected, or he doesn't get infected with the protomolecule, but he watches Eros melt down. He's one of the only people that gets off Eros. And so from then on, he's terrified of the protomolecule, hence freaking out about the monster when he first sees it, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I thought was kind of missed in the second season was that like he's essentially supposed to go from always making the right choice to a bit more of a vigilante Miller style, like executing people and not caring about blowing people up. And that tends to be like, where Naomi is just like, yeah, I'm not going to go on the ship with you. And she ends up on the somnambulist ship. So like, it's a lot more of a major focus of that book. And I felt like it didn't really make it clear just how far Holden had fallen towards the kind of hardcore
dark side,
cold-bloodedness. So I was curious if you guys picked up on that.
No, it did not translate at all. I did not get that at all. Like, that was not what I got from her staying. Like my opinion of why she stayed seemed like a very personal reason. Like, no, you go do that. I need to do this. Like, this is important. I need to make amends, or I need to sort of repent for what happened with I think is it Melissa who piloted this somnambulist?
Yes, I believe so.
Her husband dying, and to help those people. That was the exact vibe I got from that whole thing. So
yeah, I think the portrayal in the series, it was far more subtle than what you're describing.
Yeah.
In the TV series than it was in the book. That's all I can really say. I haven't read the book, so I don't know.
But similar to everything else, like generally speaking, the differences between the books and the show are subtle enough or it's not really worth getting hung up on. I was just curious if it spoke to it at all.
There was a sort of like, I don't know, like Holden did seem to have like a kind of like an Ahab-like obsession with the proto-molecule that I picked up on for sure.
A great way to put it.
And maybe, maybe that was just like how they were trying to sell it, And it might have been a bit much because, it seems pretty obvious in the series. Like if Holden was becoming exactly like Amos, Amos seems to be the type of person who is he's essentially a sociopath, but he wants to be better. So he gloms onto somebody else and borrows their moral compass.
Yeah.
And, that's James Holden is totally that to him.
Yep.
In this series.
Are you sure it's not Naomi, Ben?
Well, it's Naomi as well, but it seems like everybody that he befriends, he borrows some part of their morality, Well, he looks to them, like if they're making a decision, he believes that their decision is going to be better than his.
Yeah.
Right? He even says it in the series at one point.
And he speaks to Prax at one point saying, like, speaking about the entire crew, including Alex, saying that he doesn't have to make the hard decisions. He lets them do it. So it started with just Naomi, but it's gone to be more of the entire crew. So I definitely think both of you are right in that sense.
Yeah. Or I guess what I would say is Holden, maybe Naomi is directly, Amos's compass, but Holden is sort of like the compass for the entire crew in the series.
Yeah. Yeah. And Naomi looks to him for decision making a lot of the time too, for moral decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Ben, you could kind of say that like, because he had such a traumatic past and, possibly some PTSD from that. And he's got the sociopathic thing going on. It's almost like he realized that he was like, I need to borrow somebody else's moral compass. And for the time being, I need to just be and allow somebody else to tell me what to do until I can figure it out and get it straightened out. And that's what he did with Naomi, right? And then as we go along and he gets to know and like Holden more, then it seems more like he starts to take little bits from Holden's personality and his compass, and then start to integrate that and become, well, not become his own person, but just evolve as a person.
Yeah, it's as if he's a sociopath, but it's like he recognizes that he is, and he recognizes that he wants to be a better person. So he borrows his morality from whoever he thinks is making good choices, making better choices than he can. And yeah, I'll agree. He does seem to, in season 2, when who was the scientist that they
Dresden?
No, yeah, Dresden. No, but the one that they actually take back to Fred Johnson.
Oh yeah, I don't know. That wasn't in the book, so this is a fucking weird thing. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's not Cotillard. It's what is that?
Okay, I think people know what I'm talking about, but essentially, this scientist has had his
the beautiful mind guy that draws on the wall.
Right. Yeah. He's had his empathy erased with a magnet, basically.
Yeah.
They did this to him so he could focus on his work. So he's like this weird mirror for Amos. Like Amos has done this to himself essentially because of his past. Because of his terrible past. He's managed to compartmentalize his empathy and be able to think about himself for the sake of survival. Seems like when he meets that scientist character in the series, it really gets him thinking about himself, Whereas I think, you think he was before, but this, you really start to see a change in Amos, I think, after that encounter. It seems like he's starting to really develop, like he starts having these emotional moments,
Yeah. And that's really interesting because that scientist doesn't exist in the book at all. And Amos doesn't develop at all. And so I think that the showrunners and writers have clearly chosen for that moment to be a major inflection point for Amos as a character. And it's probably a good decision because him developing as a character instead of staying the same for the next however many seasons, it just would have got boring. So it makes sense for him to evolve, even if it's slowly.
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah, it's nothing.
It's Cortazar, by the way. It's Cortazar.
Cortazar. Thank you. Wow, that's interesting because a lot of plot points in season 2 seem to pivot around Cortazar. So
yeah, it's interesting, and the way that the stories unfold in the books is, I wouldn't say calmer, but it's a little bit drier. Like there's no OPA factionalism at all. There's none of this like shoot 'em up in the deck thing, wanting to steal the nukes thing, Fred Johnson losing power thing. Like there's none of that.
Wow.
But
now I really want to read the books, man.
Well, it's not that it's like, I guess similar to Avasarala and Bobby, like there is some factionalism later, but it's they choose to bring everything forward to kind of, maybe weave a tighter story. And part of it is for whatever normal reasons, but I feel like part of it's probably also that like these writers are able to, they know where the books are going, and so they can like sprinkle things in, as opposed to when the books were being written, like you don't really know, you don't have any hindsight to like drop nuggets in here and there to kind of start the chain of events at different points in time. I do think that the choice to have Amos, having him being a bit more self-aware and potentially wanting to dig deeper into his being a sociopath is an interesting choice for sure. And I'm sure that will become even more interesting as time goes on.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character, and I think they're digging into him nicely. It sounds like they're giving him a little more due in the series than they perhaps did in the books.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So that's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's one moment in season 2 that really like hit me emotionally, and I think they're on Tycho, and they're like the crew of the Rocinante is like helping out like with disaster relief. They're handing out stuff to refugees, and like there's a moment where like there's like a kerfuffle or whatever, and Amos just instantly reacts and like shoves this woman. And he's like, only one per person. And the little kid looks at him and he like has this like memory, like this like snap. And like it looks like he's going to start crying,
Yeah. Good one, Benny. Nice.
And what did you take away from that in terms of what was going on?
Well, it's just it's what I'm talking about, where it seems like he's starting to develop, like his sense of empathy is coming back. And he even has a conversation with, I've already forgotten his name.
Cortazar?
Cortazar. He has a conversation with Cortazar, and Cortazar is like, he's explaining this stuff to Cortazar, and Cortazar is like, oh yeah, you can, you'll be better if you just stamp out those last ashes of empathy. Like, I can help you with it. I know how to do it.
Sure.
And he's like, yeah, right. Cortisone cream. That's it. Cortisone cream.
Cortisone, extra strength.
There you go. Just rub it in there like icy hot.
It reduces the inflammation. Yeah.
That's it. Did you?
It reduces inflammation. The inflammation of empathy. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So to kind of like try and pull us out of this a little bit, season 1 is Kev's favorite space truckers meets a noir meets Halo kind of vomit zombies, which is a really interesting kind of story. And then season 2 is kind of the aftermath of that, where the protomolecule is now developing into something, flying towards Venus, the politics of everyone being scared shitless of a small planetoid flying through space, and Holden's panic.
It really morphs into like a espionage thriller in the second season. You know what I mean? Like it's clearly like, the oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Yes, dude. The prototrope becomes the MacGuffin, the McMuffin of the second season, and everybody's sort of chasing it around and like, who's diddling who through the keyhole and all that sort of thing. It's like,
yeah.
Did you get all that?
That was ubiquitous, mendacious, and polyglottal. A couple of donkey balls thrown in there too.
Oh, the donkey ball.
Hey man, I like that. Donkey balls. That's great.
The that Kenzo dude, for example, is a complete construct. The stowaway, which I thought was interesting.
He was a mole. He was a plant by Aaron, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah,
right. He was like a Black Ops guy. I feel like he kind of just like nothing happened with him. Like he just sort of disappeared. And I was like, wait, this has to resolve. Or am I forgetting something?
No, you're not. He was just a plot device.
Well, they should have done something more with his. They should have ended him a better way, because unless he's going to come back, which he may, I don't know, but
you fucking better not.
Because that ended up being, as to use one of my favorite terms from Jarhigo, a nothing burger of an ending for a character that had a lot of screen time and a lot of interplay in the story.
Yeah. This isn't one of my two nuggets, but it turns out he is like a motion capture expert, and so he plays pretty much all of the motion captured characters in the show.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was kind of a random thing for the actor. So nothing against the actor, but the character was weird.
Whoa, cool. I like that.
So it's like they created the role just to give the guy a little like actual FaceTime,
I guess.
in the series.
Speaking of kind of secondary characters, what did you guys think of the Prax thing?
I like Prax. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting addition to the crew of the Rocinante for a period.
Yeah. His like problem solving uber scientist, really smart guy thing I like, where he's like, he sees it immediately and he has to kind of like walk the crew through what he's come up with.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting interactions that happened there. And in general, like just that arc of the story with Ganymede refugees, and pretty fucking shocking part when they basically first introduce the character and he's there with his friend who basically rescued him. And then like, so all the shit is going on and the Belter, crew guard or whatever comes in and he's like, oh, inner worlders, come with me. There's a ship here. We're gonna send you guys back. And then they just fucking space everybody, man. It's like, holy fuck.
Yeah, that was pretty hardcore.
Yeah. I was like kind of spacing out through it and I had forgotten about that part and I like went back. I had to like rewind it like a couple of times to like try and I was like, why the fuck did they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be really pushing trying to like really hammer home the not xenophobia, the racism between planetary groups, I think it's a completely understandable thing, but the Belters are supposed to be like a meter taller, and like unable to go onto a planet, so, which is
right.
obviously totally impossible from a filming standpoint. So it's completely understandable. But as a result, like making it crystal clear that the different factions absolutely hate each other requires, I think, brutal scenes like that, I suppose. So I was definitely like, oh shit, that's heavy, but it makes sense as to why they did it.
I think xenophobia might be the proper word there.
Yeah, I suppose it's somewhat of a getting towards a branching of the species.
Yeah, well, I mean, in general, like you're talking about cultures,
Yeah.
and their hatred towards each other more than, the race of somebody,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's social disparity. It's like the difference between natives and Washashores when you're talking about an island community. You know what I mean? Like there's that to me anyway, that jumped out at me is very present. It's like, when in my guy, I'm like looking at the time and I'm like, we haven't even talked about so many things. Like Jared Harris is such an incredible actor and he plays what's his face? The guy that Fred and the other people elect as
Dawes. Anderson Dawes.
Yeah, Dawes. Thank you. Anderson Dawes. Sorry. He's terrific, but he's he very much accentuates the point of being a Belter versus not being a Belter. And Washashores are not welcome. Yeah. Washashores are not Belters. Like, yeah, Fred Johnson, you did this, you repented, you atoned for your sins, or you're trying to atone for your sins, but you are not a Belter. Holden, you are from Earth. You may have betrayed X and done Y, but you are not a Belter. End of story.
And also he had the Miller, you were born in the Belt, but you're acting like an Earther and you're working for an Earth company, so get your shit together and stop being a traitor.
Exactly. So, that...
Well, voila.
Yeah.
Is that, what'd you say?
He's just speaking some Creole.
Well, voila.
Oh, right on. Some Belter Creole, totally. Ben, that scene where they spaced them reminds me of the whole sequence of Melissa's husband being shot to death by accident on the Somnambulist, and then the whole drama of them choosing who was going to go, I thought was really well done. And it could have just been lame as hell. And they really, really made it pretty awesome.
It was really messy.
Yeah.
What do you mean in terms of what?
Being realistic, it was very messy. It was very complicated. It was very, what you would imagine a situation like that to be. There was no like they did a very good job of presenting it that way and not, sterilizing it too much for TV or.
Yeah, they didn't phone it in and they didn't throw it away either. I liked that. I liked how they made it exactly as it should be, and it was just touching. It was really touching. There was a lot of touching parts of that. Even like, there was one actress, she it was clear that she was with her husband and he was like the last young man that didn't make it on, and not a lot of dialogue, not a lot there, but just some really great choices and some looks and some physical acting really conveyed a lot between those two actors. And I just little touches like that, I think, are what really makes the show shine. And that's what made that particular scene really great. Also, the big man with the pipe or whatever it was that he was holding, like that whole thing was so great. And that speech he gave at the end was awesome, man. Just really great.
Yeah, before that takes shape, it seems like they might just take off and Amos and Melissa might get their way and they were just going to bounce. And so it was interesting, even just that Naomi being like, nah, and going out and just trying to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I really liked how he kind of flipped the Belter thing around, where there's a lot of like, oh, woe is us, the poor Belters throughout the whole thing, like constantly, and he kind of flipped that a little bit and was like, no, we're Belters. We're tough. We're this, we're that. We're going to do the right thing here. We're going to make this work. We're going to figure this out. We always figure things out. We're going to figure this out too. Or we're just going to die together because we're tough. And I dug that. I just thought it was one of the best scenes in seasons 1 and 2.
It was a super powerful scene. The whole like we're tough Belters thing really kind of reminds me of the Fremen from Dune, like the guys that go and live in the desert and become so damn tough that they just end up taking over because they're hard while everyone else is soft. And that kind of really vibes with the Anderson Dawes kind of thing too, and even the OPA stuff on Tycho and stuff. So it's an interest. I really like the Belter faction especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think that they when Bobby finally, goes down to give her testimony on Earth, you really start to understand Earthers and why they're called takers. And just I was shocked when they were going back and forth in that sort of deposition. And she was explaining like why Earth people are the way they are. And it's like, everybody's basically on welfare. Like, I was like, wow, what a horrible direction for everybody to go in on this planet. You know what I mean? Where it's like, there's not enough jobs. So
it's like a dark vision of something like UBI. But the thing is, it smacks of there not being enough to go around.
Yeah.
Whereas, the positive version of that story is, well, if there's not enough jobs, then, everybody gets what they need to survive. And, people, ultimately like the positive version of that vision would be like people get to do art or learn about new things or, like the kind of, or whatever, like the Star Trek kind of version of things, so this is like a very dark vision of that outcome.
Sure. And it also is, it's also pretty clear that Bobby's viewpoint would be based on knowledge from the outside, and the knowledge from the outside would be somewhat propaganda in the sense that all Earthers are lazy, all Earthers are this, all Earthers are that, touching on that xenophobia again. Like, there's probably a grain of truth in the center of that, but the actual reality, like you're saying, Ben, is probably a lot more nuanced.
Yeah.
But the facts of the matter, like you're saying, Kev, is there's, 15 plus billion people. There isn't enough jobs to go around. So by definition, something would have to be, different. And in this case, the idea of basic for people and only certain people get jobs it's interesting. It kind of ties into the Holden having multiple parents kind of thing, which was interesting too. 8 parents to get a tax break, to get the land kind of thing. So it's just some of the Earther dynamics were an interesting, extrapolation of things like overpopulation and global warming style issues. And just to be clear, I don't mean overpopulation in the old racist eugenics sense of the term. I just mean in the sense of, in these fictional novels, is 15 billion people on Earth, so double the population we have now, basically.
Well, I mean, they're again in sort of typical science fiction manner, they're tackling these very real issues that we're having today: overpopulation, entitlement. Like, all those things are present in this show that are problems today.
I feel like kind of a last stop would be Eros crashing into Venus and the like ship coming apart towards the end of the season thing, which was an interesting kind of climax to the second season.
The ship coming apart, meaning
I forget the name of the ship, like Arborgrass or whatever, with Adam Savage from Mythbusters sitting in the bridge.
And Adam Savage glossed over in vacuum.
Yeah, dying in vacuum with the ship being disassembled.
that was very cool and very interesting. And I like how they're just letting trickles of the information of what happened on Venus come out. I said that in a very jonky way, but I think you know what I mean. Like, I like how they're just trickling it out, like what happened. They're not like, okay, now all the focus is on Eros and what happened to Venus. Like, you know, it's like little bits. I like it.
Yeah. I liked how we kind of breezed by this, but I liked how the protomolecule on Eros ended up kind of co-opting Julie Mao's brain and became Julie Mao to a degree that Miller could go and convince her to not crash into Earth, and she thought she was racing against the Rocinante, and then the protomolecule, you know, smashes into Venus and then also shows signs of sentience with disassembling the ship but not the people because it's already disassembled 100,000 people on Eros. And it just kind of, it's a really interesting character, the protomolecule.
Yeah, I mean, it's going about doing all these, you know, atrocious things, but it's just trying to learn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is interesting. And then jumping back to Miller and Julie Mao, like, I thought that was an interesting scene for sure. With the kiss aside, which I thought was, I don't know, for TV, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe a fitting send off for Miller because it's pretty clear that he's, you know, from a distance fallen in love with who she is.
Oh, yeah.
I wish they had put more into that, actually. I didn't get a ton of that.
Of the him being in love thing?
Yeah, and I actually thought the kiss was kind of more like, you know, if I'm going to die here, this is going to be the last human thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to connect with this human being, like as a person and, you know, sort of romantically as well, like whatever, however you want to call it, you know. That's how I sort of read that.
I suppose that version of it would make sense from Julie Mao's perspective. You know, that's the only part about the kiss that seems strange to me, is it's like, you know, Miller knows who she is, and it's pretty clear that he's been following her case because he's got this feeling for her, you know?
Yeah.
And he knows everything about her. Like, he's like, you know, in the very first episode, or the second episode, he's, you know, got that cool vocal imitator, and he's going through her apartment, you know, and he really, really gets into her head, you know, by uncovering the pieces of her life and sort of getting into her life. I think it's, you know, in that way that like people, you know, they sort of become fans of celebrities, and like they learn everything about them, and then they feel like they know them, and it's like, you don't know them, you know, or maybe you do, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting topic. And I just want to say as an aside about Miller, I really like how once he hooked up with the crew of the Rocinante, he continually put himself on the edge of his comfort zone constantly before, up to, and, you know, all the way up to him being with Julia. Is it Julia or Julie? It's Julia.
Juliet.
Yeah, just jumping back a little bit. It kind of says something about, like, Miller investigating that case says a lot about Miller, you know, and the who he is as a detective and how he goes about things. And it you know, it's like he really has to emotionally throw himself into something, it seems like. Or it's the things that he's emotionally compelled to do that are the things that he does, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he finally found something to care about.
Yeah.
Other than himself, somewhat.
The whole thing seemed like that was the arc, you know, like he was going to keep going until he found Julie Mao. And when he did, he was totally resigned to, you know, just end it right there with her.
Yep, 100%.
Like, now I can die kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's exactly what I got. And, you know, there is, to my recollection, there's no kiss. And also to my recollection, Julie is like a blob on the side of a wall. She's not like a fully formed humanoid form with some blue strings attached to her, you know, and Miller's like a fat Dennis Franz. So like it plays different when you think about it in a different context, but the core of it, I think, is the same. Where like one of the things that I really liked about Miller is that he's created an image of Julie Mao that he's fallen in love with, but he's never met her. And so it makes sense for him to be like, I'm in love with you, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to take my helmet off and let the protomolecule infect me and be there with you in the last human, thing that he does. And it is out of love, but it's out of misguided love. It's out of like, he's created and put her on a pedestal love, like she doesn't love him back, so. That's
what I was saying about the celebrity thing a second ago. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it ties right into that for sure.
But I would clarify a little bit where I think like you're meant to think that his intuitions about Julie Mao are a little more on the nose than say, somebody's obsession with a celebrity,
Yeah.
Like he really has in some way gotten inside of her head.
Yeah. It's a really interesting space that they explored because, he could be as well researched as you could possibly be, but there is a difference between being, aware of someone and having actually interacted and met someone. So I kind of like that the first time he meets her, she's dead in a shower stall, and then the second time he meets her, she's alive but non-human. So it just kind of it fits his kind of character in a way because he's driven by these kind of like various motives of his personal failures and successes, but the fact that he doesn't get the girl in the end, in the old trope, he gets the alien in the end and becomes, a part of it, I guess, or whatever, and dies. It's an interesting way to resolve, a detective noir trope where the detective always gets the girl generally, or doesn't because he's an alcoholic. And it was just kind of an interesting way to resolve a common trope.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, it was interesting, and also that she was in the sort of like Matrix Neo style prototrope molecule version of the tentacle chair. Gotta love that.
And then they cliffhang the season 2 in a very interesting way. So it should be interesting to watch the next couple seasons and chat about them in more detail.
Sounds right. I don't think we need to. Do we need to bother rating this? I don't think we need to do that.
I would like to, if we have the ability to.
What does that mean?
Are you willing to rate it?
I'm willing.
Well, I would like to, if you don't mind.
My instinct is to rate the the series.
In 7 years,
as it stands. In 7 years when it's over. Well, as it stands now, as opposed to, it's hard for me to jump back and think in terms of like, okay, how would I have rated season 1 without knowing what's going on in season 2? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to once it's happened, it's like hard to prize it apart.
That's why I said that. Yeah.
I think it's okay to abstain from rating, but I'm going to rate it. So if you guys don't want it, that's fine.
This will be an EBD first. Go ahead.
I think it'll come as no surprise that I rate the first couple seasons harshly, but I expect it to improve.
None whatsoever.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the next couple seasons are going to get a better grade, and I have a lot of optimism that the seasons that have not been made yet are going to get even better. But I think for me, it's a C. I think it's probably going to be easily into B territory for the third and fourth season, and I think it would be quite likely to get up into the A's as things go on, especially considering that they can now swear and now, have no time constraints and do whatever the hell they want, even with the same budget with Amazon. Like, I'm really excited to see what they do with Amazon.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and do the same. I would say season 1 for me, I'll go ahead and give it a B-, and I'll give season 2 a B++. I really, and I mean, that's being harsh for me. Like, I really enjoyed the entire experience, and I can't wait to dive into season 3 now. So I'll just keep it short and sweet. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give it a whirl. Chad, I'll go one above you and say B-.
Fair. Yep.
It took a while for the show to resonate with me, even, through season 1. But, here's the thing. I really enjoyed Miller's arc. And now that Miller is gone, I kind of miss him.
Yeah, fair.
Me too.
And so, all the same problems that you're probably thinking of, Chad, I am thinking of, which would relate to a C. But because of the Miller arc and my nostalgia for that, I'll bump it up a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And I think just because seasons 1 and 2 are a C for me doesn't mean they're bad by any means. But it also, like, aside from from the rating, you get sucked in pretty quickly. Like, even if it takes 6 episodes to get sucked in, once you're in, you really want to keep watching, and it's really enjoyable. So it's great entertainment.
Definitely. Yeah. But it's, early in the show like that, every show has growing pains,
Yeah, definitely.
And every show, it seems to take a little while for the writing to get like up to speed, and it seems to take a little while for the cast to gel and really vibe together, and, by the end of season 2, we're well on our way. Things are looking good. And I think they did a really good job with all of it, but it's just the kind of thing you would get with any show starting off. There's always a little bit of growing pains.
Yeah, not to mention that the actors have 5 years under their belt now on the set, so I'm sure that it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
Okay, so we've rated it. You guys want to talk about deaths?
I don't even remember. Do you guys remember?
I know that I had one within the first minute, and that's the only one that I even recall.
I think I had another death where you Googled halfway through my attempt to like bring something of interest to the podcast.
So that was me killing you.
Yeah, something like that.
Murder, death, kill. Right on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm totally interrupting you, Benny. I brought Star Wars up in this show, so I die by definition.
Oh, damn you, dude.
Wilhelm scream.
That's right. And I mentioned something at right in the beginning that bombed horribly, and I don't even remember what it was.
I don't remember. I feel like this is kind of a serious episode.
It's definitely more cerebral, no doubt about it.
A lot of material to tackle.
Yeah, it tends to be less deathy.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, when nobody's going for a bad joke, it's...
All my jokes are bad jokes.
Exactly.
Benny.
Whoa, easy, dude.
But sometimes they land.
Right on. So let's. We've rated it, folks at home. We hope you've enjoyed joining us on this journey through the Expanse. Can we talk about space truckers now?
You still have it open on your phone?
I do.
Now we can add it to the list as a pick if you want.
I want to say I'm intrigued. Okay, and here's why I'm intrigued. $25 million budget. Box office, 1.6 million.
Wow, that's a flop.
Hold on, it gets better than that. Top actors: Debbie Mazar, who is incredible. Dennis Hopper, say what you will about him. Stephen Dorff, always loved him. Charles Dance, another great actor. George Wendt, another almost American icon of an actor. So now
I cut all of this and then have it done in a robotic voice? Kev's in this episode. Everybody Kevs.
In this episode, everybody Kevs. Wait, what do you mean?
The text-to-speech voice?
Did you skip over that in your edit where we're going to create a whole nother offshoot podcast where it's Siri reading IMDb entries and it's
1996 Space Truckers with actors Dennis Hopper, Debbie Mazar.
What do you? I don't know if I fully understand. I know I get that you're making fun of me, but I don't understand exactly how. Is it? What are you saying, that I'm too robotic when I read these things?
No, it blew up last week.
Have you ever gone on YouTube to look something up and you end up with one of those videos where it's literally just like some person did a text-to-speech thing to a background?
Yes, I have.
We're likening your info dumps to something similar.
Sometimes you nerd out on IMDb and just read from top to bottom, and we're just taking the piss.
I am absolutely reading from top to bottom on what I just Googled it, man. I mean, sorry, Jimmy Googled it and handed me the phone, and I was like, this is good. All right, I'm down with that. That also makes me think of, and I forgot to mention this last week, like in the whatever episode. Jesus, I don't even remember what episode that was. We were talking about the Degenitron from Grand Theft Auto. The real nugget, my favorite fake commercial from Grand Theft Auto is for that stupid musical called "In the Future There Will Be Robots."
Okay, I don't remember that one.
Oh God.
I knew Ben would remember it. We'll have to. Well, that you saying that me reading that in like a text to speech kind of auto tuned voice made me think of that. So anyway, we'll have to throw that into the show notes or something for the folks at home as a little side nuggie. Anyway. I really enjoyed watching these and talking about them, and I can't wait to get into, again, talking about seasons 3 and 4. So, who is it, Mike S. that suggested this?
Yes.
Chad, is that right? Mike S., thank you for recommending it. I really enjoyed this whole journey.
Bada bing, huh? Seasons 3 and 4, we got to crunch those.
And now it comes time for what has become one of my favorite parts of the show, where I ask Algorithm, where are we flying to next week?
So next week, we got a bit of an interesting one. We're doing a World War II drama that's from Germany's perspective. It's been called The German Band of Brothers. It's called Generation War. It's super interesting. It's a 3-parter, I believe, on Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime, so if anyone wants to check it out, is a really good chance that most people haven't heard of it. I just stumbled across it on a Reddit thread or something. Being a huge fan of Band of Brothers, I was intrigued by the German perspective. So it's nowhere near as good in terms of money spent, but it's quite interesting just in terms of subject. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it.
Well, there you go, folks. So check that out and join us for next week when we talk about that very interesting documentary, film, whatever, series. Yeah, miniseries. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you on another time.
See ya.
Ding.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode, folks. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we're going to be talking about the German production miniseries Generation War. So definitely stay tuned for that. That's going to be an interesting one. You can find the show notes for today's episode in your podcast app of choice or on our website, ebd.fm/episodes/43. You can shoot us questions using the Twitter hashtag AskEBD. You can find me, Moverine, on Twitter at MOHLVERINE. Chad is at Chad Normal on Twitter, and Ben is at Jarhigo on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. I'd like to take a second and thank everybody so much for tuning into the show. It means the world to the three of us. And if you'd like to support the show, there's a couple of great ways you can do that. First, by rating and reviewing us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast nuggets. You can also tell someone to check out the show. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful and incredibly effective. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you next time.